Happy holy day.
All right, happy holy day.
Holy day.
All meetings are to be opened and closed promptly according to the Circle 7 in love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. We ask that everyone who is able to please rise facing the east, and this young sister will lead us in the Moorish American prayer. Here you go. Stand over here. All right.
Allah,
Allah,
the Father of the universe,
the Father of the universe,
the Father of love,
Father of love,
truth,
truth,
peace,
peace,
freedom,
freedom,
and justice.
and justice.
Allah is my protector,
Allah is my protector,
my guide, and my salvation.
my guide, and my salvation,
By night and by day,
by night and by day,
through His holy prophet,
through his holy prophet,
Drew Ali.
Drew Ali.
Amen.
Amen. All right, good job.
Islam.
Islam is.
Almighty.
All right, I want to announce that this meeting is now open. First and foremost, we always rise and give the highest praise to the Most High, the Father of the universe, our Father God Allah. We also extend in honors to our divine prophet, Noble Drew Ali, for bringing us our divine creed and nationality. We give honors to the forerunner to the prophet, our brother Marcus Mosiah Garvey, for preparing the way for purity and love. We also extend in honors to all the 8 SHEIKS and all the faithful Moors that make up the grand body of the Moorish Divine National Movement. We extend in honors to the first appointed Supreme Grand Sheikh by our prophet, and that is our brother Emily Ill. We also extend in honors to the current Supreme Grand Sheikh, brother K. Dandrigel. Honors to the Grand Council of the Moorish Science Temple of America, and honors to all the faithful Muslims on this call. Islam, Islamism. That young sister is 8 years old, and she memorized the Moorish American prayer, Islam. So, Brother Jackson Bey, would you please read the Divine Constitution and Bylaws?
Islam Sheikh, I rise giving perfect praise to Allah, and honors to the Prophet Drew Ali, honors to our forefathers and our foremothers, honors to the Asiatic nations and the Muslims all over the world. Salvation, Allah, unity, the Moorish Science Temple of America, the Divine Constitution and Bylaws. Act 1, the Grand Sheikh and the Chairman of the Moorish Science Temple of America is empowered to make law and enforce law with the assistance of the Prophet and the Grand Body of the Moorish Science Temple of America. The Assistant Grand Sheikh is to assist the Grand Sheikh in all affairs if he lives according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, and is known before the members of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Act 2, all meetings are to be open and closed promptly according to Circle 7 in love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Friday is our holy day of rest because on a Friday, the first man was formed in flesh, and on Friday, the first man departed out of flesh and ascended unto his Father God Allah. For that cause, Friday is the holy day for all Muslims all over the world. Act 3, love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice must be proclaimed and practiced by all members of the Moorish Science Temple of America. No member is to put in danger or accuse falsely his brother or sister on any occasion at all that may harm his brother or sister, because Allah is love. Act 4, all members must preserve these holy and divine laws, and all members must obey the laws of the government, because by being a Moorish American, you are part and partial of the government and must live life accordingly. Act 5, this organization of the Moorish Science Temple of America is not to cause any confusion or to overthrow the laws and constitution of the said government, but to obey hereby. Act 6, with us, all members must proclaim their nationality, and we are teaching our people their nationality and their divine creed, that they may know that they are part and partial of this said government, and know that they are not Negroes, colored folks, black people, or Ethiopians, because these names were given to slaves by slaveholders in 1779 and lasted until 1865 during the time of slavery. But this is a new era of time now. And all men now must proclaim their free national name to be recognized by the government in which they live and the nations of the earth. This is the reason why Allah, the great God of the universe, ordained Noble Drew Ali, the prophet, to redeem his people from their sinful ways. The Moorish Americans are the descendants of the ancient Moabites who inhabited the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa. Act 7, all members must promptly attend their meetings and become part and partial of all uplifting acts of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Members must pay their dues and keep in line with all necessities of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Then you are entitled to the name of faithful. Husband, you must support your wife and children. Wife, you must obey your husband, take care of your children, and look after the duties of your household. Sons and daughters must obey father and mother and be industrious and become part of the uplifting of form of humanity. All Moorish Americans must keep their hearts and minds pure with love and their bodies clean with water. This divine covenant is from your holy prophet, Noble Drew Ali, through the guidance of his father, God Allah. Moorish, Noble Drew Ali, founder, Moorish American prayer. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day, through his holy prophet, Ali. Amen. The Moorish Science Temple of America, Home Office, Noble Drew Ali, Home Office, Chicago, Illinois, USA. Islam, Islamism. Happy Holy Day, Muslims.
All right, Islamism and gratitude, brother. Let's see, Brother Kobe, would you please read the writs of our prophet?
Islam, Grand Sheikh. I rise and give all praise to the great God, Allah. Rise and give honors to our prophet, Noble Drew Ali. Arise and give honors to the forerunner, Marcus Messiah Garvey. Arise and give honors to all the ills and babes. Arise and give honors to all the Muslims on this call and all the Muslims on this planet. To the members of the Moorish Science Temple of America, Islam, this instructions from your prophet, Noble Drew Ali. Be faithful unto your forefather divine and national creed, that you will be blessed for your good deeds that you sow in the flesh. Allah is the one that judges the world, and his judgment is on now, but the weak can comprehend it not. Then the times are drawing near, so says Allah to his divine prophet, I, Noble Drew Ali, and that is why many hearts have turned to stone. Many have eyes to see, but cannot see, ears to hear, but cannot hear, least they'll be confounded of their sins. These are the trying hours now, dear Moors, and every evil spirit is moving, and they are trying every weak mind to overthrow and drag out the true foundation that has been laid and cause confusion in the minds of the ones that do believe. But if you have the true love of Allah and the spirit of your forefathers, you fear not what you hear or see, but will sacrifice the utmost of your very life to protect your movement and your prophet. Watch your enemies, dear Moors. Your enemies are the ones that speak against your prophet and ridicule him to the very lowest, and the ones that speak against your divine and national principles of your temples. Act accordingly, and Allah will bless you for your good work. Peace. Your divine prophet, Noble Drew Ali. To be proclaimed in every meeting. Islam. I'm glad to know I have a few faithful Moors among you all, and I desire for them to know the truth and the divine truth. There's a host of jealousy about me and the movement now by the same people of our side of the nation that claimed that I was a joke and unreal. But now, since they found out from the government officials and the nations of the earth that this is the only sole foundation that all Asiatics must depend upon for their earthly salvation as American citizens, they are working every scheme that they can to disqualify me so they may take charge of the situation. I have notified all these things to you long ago in the past. It is through the faithful Moors that attribute to the movement and uplifting funds. The ones that pay their divine respects to me and the movement will be remembered. That's why I'm calling upon all faithful Moors to increase their faithfulness to me, your prophet, and your divine Moorish movement. I need finance, and I need it badly. Never before I needed finance so badly as I do at present, so I can shove aside the discord that is facing the nation. It all comes through jealousy because of my fame and nobility. The nations of the world will not recognize the movement without I, the prophet, being head. It has been proven by my works which I have performed in the past few years. Prophet, Noble Drew Ali. Prophet warns all Muslims to be read in every meeting. I hereby inform all members they must end all radical speeches while at work, in their homes, and on the streets. We are for peace and not destruction. Stop flash your cards to Europeans. It causes confusion. Remember, your card is for your salvation. Failure to obey these orders will be a severe consequence. We are for love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And when these principles are violated, justice must then take its course. Any member or group of members who hold malicious feelings towards the temple or the prophet or violate the divine covenant of the Moorish movement will receive their rewards from Allah for their unjust deeds. All true Moors will and must obey the law laid down to them by their prophet. If they lose confidence in their prophet, They should turn in their card and button, cease wearing their turban and fez, and return to the state where I, the prophet, found you. This is a holy and divine movement founded by the prophet Noble Jew Ali. And if the prophet is not right, the temple is not right. The prophet, therefore, is sending out a divine plea to all Moorish Americans. They do their part in protecting the prophet and the temple. This is an everlasting movement founded by the prophet through the will of Allah to redeem his people from their sinful ways. Peace. Noble Jew Ali. Islam, Islam, Islamism. Happy Holy Day.
Islamism and gratitude, brother, gratitude. All right, I want to speak on a few things before we get started with today's lesson. We will be in chapter 15 in the Holy Koran of the Moorish Science Temple of America. We're going to go over our lesson and then we'll open the floor to questions. So for anyone that's new on this call, just hold your questions. And once we finish with the Quran, we'll open the floor. If everyone that has a Moorish literature book would please turn in your Moorish literature to, well, you know what? It's Prophet announces his authority and power. In my book, it's page 26. All right. I'm going to read this for a reason. So let's go ahead and get started. Prophet announces his authority and power. And this is something that Prophet Noble Drew Ali published. And for us, this is law. All right. So make sure you listen up and go back and look at this when you get a chance. It's in the Moorish literature book. Forced to make changes. All governors and other officers of the Moorish Science Temple, are hereby congratulated for their past loyalty and fidelity. For I know it will be the same in the future. Right. So, he's speaking what he wants in the future, even if everybody's not cooperating. Because of certain incidents that have arisen in some of the temples, which seem to come from the fact that there are those who do not know where the seat of power is vested, right, where the seat of power is fixed, the prophet has ordered the following to be published. All right. And this is a decree. He's letting it know this is a law. All right. All authority and power of the Moorish Science Temple of America is vested in the Prophet Noble Drew Ali and those whom he appoints to act as in the supreme body. The Prophet has the authority and power to expel any officer or member of the Moorish Science Temple of America who willfully violates or refuses to comply with the rules in regard to branch Moorish Science Temple. And such suspensions and expulsions shall stand until in the judgment of the prophet, the members and officers shall have made satisfactory atonement. All officers and members of the Moorish Science Temple of America and such rules and regulations of the Constitution shall be in writing and not at variance with any law of the city, town, or nation which the prophet shall declare law. All right. During this session of the convention, all rules, regulations, and laws of the Constitution and such as might be enacted and ordered by the prophet shall express and explain in detail, so there can be no doubt as to what is required of each and every member, officer, or member of the organization. The prophet will positively not tolerate any interference with the operation of this national divine movement from anyone by the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. So one of the reasons why I'm speaking on this, and maybe you already can tell why, the prophet was having issues in his time with people who were going outside of what he set the Moorish divine and national movement up for. All right. The prophet declared over and over again that we're citizens of the United States of America. We are to abide by the laws. We're not anti-government. We're not to be doing anything to place ourselves and our families in harm's way, right? We're about empowering ourselves. We're about, you know what? I'm just going to go to the prophet's words since I have Moorish literature in front of me. The prophet said when he's describing the aims of the Moorish Science Temple of America, he says that Our problems are for the most part economic and social, and then from a profound perspective, they're spiritual and moral, right? And so he's letting this be known that, from our perspective, a portion of what we do with our religion is empowering ourselves economically, building up our own communities, right? And then also working on ourselves, cleaning ourselves up, okay? So we never forget that. But there's nothing in here that says that we're to operate outside of the movement. And actually, in Moorish literature, you have an article. It's called The Moorish Science Temple of America, right? And I'm just going to read a little bit from it. We of the Moorish Science Temple of America, like countless other American citizens, know that we must live here in America in harmony, friendship, and goodwill, whatever our race and creed may be, right? That's stated loud and clear because, well, from one perspective, that's what we honestly, that's what we stand on. But also, you can't attack that, right? You can't attack that. We understand, like countless other Americans, we must Islam. Does somebody have something to say? Okay. So yeah, we understand, like countless other American citizens, that we must live together in harmony, friendship, and goodwill, whatever our race and creed may be. It is only from a purely religious standpoint, it seems at this time, that we differ from a large number of our fellow Americans. We believe in and foster the American religion, right? So, that understanding, that point of view can't come under attack. There's nothing wrong with that, right? And this is what the prophet set the movement up for, so that we can build up our own communities, have a nationalistic point of view, so that we have our own national treasury, our own local treasury, right? For our own national and local strategies and goals, right? Looking out for ourselves. And, that's something that our people were missing. So he set that up. But he never said that we're to be out here acting like we were above the law, like the laws did not apply to us. Matter of fact, in our Constitution, it says that we are to abide by the laws. And then it says that again in here. Prophet announces his authority and power. So there was an issue. Then he had some people who, upon receiving this knowledge, right, the prophet's giving us our divine origin. He's given us history that has been hidden away, right? The Koran of the Moorish Science Temple of America says it was divinely prepared by the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Divinely prepared. You have portions of it that are in another book that the Rosicrucian order has. If you've never heard of that, that's something you could look up. It's like a I guess you could say almost like a secret society where they get into esoteric knowledge. The Rosicrucian Society has a book called Unto Thee I Grant. Then there's other portions of it that are in another book called the Aquarian Gospel, right? But then there's some portions in here that aren't anywhere else. And I'm talking about, for the most part, the last couple of chapters where he's speaking on our divine origin. He lets it be known that we descend from the creators of civilization, and that our ancestors have been over here in North, South, and Central America and the Atlantis Islands so long that we were here before the Atlantic Ocean was created. So he's letting us know that all of this land is ours, returning this knowledge to you. You come from greatness, the creators of civilization. So it's a lot of information. And for some of us then, and even now, might have been too much information. People were feeling zealous. People were going out and letting it be known that they didn't have to do anything. They didn't have to abide by the laws, right? This is all theirs. And so the prophet had to put out decrees. This isn't the only one, right? This is not the only one. So the prophet had to put this out there to make sure. Why? Because we actually had a nation. You had temples all over the country. So you have to put this out there so that all of these Moors have this, okay, in their leadership. Look, the prophet said we are to abide by the laws. We are not to, let's read this. All officers and members of the Moorish Science Temple of America and such rules and regulations of the Constitution shall be in writing. Why do you have to do that? Because in Act 1, it says that the Grand Sheik and the chairman, with the assistance of the assistant Grand Sheik, are empowered to make and enforce law wherever they're at, right? So we're able to set laws and traditions for our people in our area that we abide by, right? But it's not to be at variance with the state, you know, the city, town, or nation, right, where we're at. So we're to abide by those laws. And, you know, in actuality, if we're true Muslims, we practice Islam or Islamism, we're not going to be going against these laws anyway, right? But this had to be reiterated. So we see the things that are going on in the news, not knocking these people, you know, whether I agree with their philosophy or not knocking them, but if they were following the prophet's laws, that stuff wouldn't even be happening, right? Because if, for example, we were going to have, if we were going to have firearms, they would be licensed and registered. It wouldn't be an issue. We'd be just like everyone else. No issue. None at all. People want to argue the Second Amendment right. The Second Amendment says you have the right to a well-regulated militia. Who's it regulated by? The state. So if your state says that you want to form a militia, you need to inform us so that we at least know what's going on, right? If you're going to holler Second Amendment, you need to abide by that. You need to let the state know. So if the state doesn't even know what you're doing, you're licensed, they require you to have a guns license, but you don't even have one, then you're out of whack. You're not even abiding by their laws. You're not abiding by our laws. Just lawless out here, doing whatever you want to do. And that is not how it shall be. And so to go further into this, is not talking about any one case, as there's a lot of people who are out here winging it, doing their own. Not talking about any one thing, but listen, we have our own laws. We have our own rules and regulations for us that we are to abide by. And I want to speak on that. Let's go also to all governors, grand sheiks, and heads of all officials of all temples. There's a part 1 and 2. I'm going to go over both of those briefly. Let me see if I can pull that up on here. So in my book, it's page 59, but I know some of the pages are different. So, but it's called To All Governors. Okay. All right. So now I want to give us an understanding of what the prophet set up for us. We're not just lawless out here. With the creation of the Moorish Science Temple of America, the prophet created a body politic. He created an Islamic nation state. Within this, it has we have 3 branches of government, right? We have a system of ruling over ourselves. We're civilized. We have law and order. We have constitutions and we have laws, and we have ways of creating new laws for ourselves, right? And so this is very important for us to understand. If we don't understand this, if we're just going off of, because I know people can find out about this online and from, you know, somebody in the street, I don't know. But if you don't know how this actually works, then you're still uncivilized. And the reason I say that you're uncivilized, I don't mean that as a knock to anyone. Really what I'm saying that is, and let me go ahead and get sidetracked for a second. We're uncivilized because as Black people, we were given a name. We were given a culture. We were given a history. The European created us. He created the Negro. He defined the Negro. They created several laws defining the Negro. They started the Negro as slavery. And they start our history at slavery. And they've brainwashed us so much that anytime we see or hear the word slave, we pretty much relate it to ourselves. There was even a movie called Brother from Another Planet. And I'd say check it out, but don't check this mess out. It was like from the 80s, and the dude in there, the brother from another planet, he's an alien and he was a slave. He was running away from some slave catchers in the movie. Somehow he got to Earth, right? So they, even in the media in Hollywood, they're trying to show us even we're intergalactic slaves. Don't matter where you see a Black person coming from, they started at slavery, right? So the European defined us, the Negro, they start as slavery. They don't really have any origin. They didn't have a religion. They were uncivilized. The European gave us Christianity. And they gave us a distorted, messed up version of it, right? They gave us everything. They civilized us. So now we are coming into our own, and what the prophet reconnected us to, it dates back to the creators of civilization. But in order to be connected to that, you need to come into this and actually know that we have laws. We have to conduct ourselves a certain way. So to all governors, grand sheiks, and heads of all officials of all temples, by order of Prophet Noble Drew Ali, has said the following thing during this, our very first convention. Prophet Noble Drew Ali said that the Moorish Science Temple of America was organized to play a useful and defined part in the advancement of the sacred obligation of American citizenship, as the Moorish Divine National Movement was founded for the uniting of the Asiatic states of North America on May 1st, 1916. So it's saying, the prophet said the Moorish Science Temple of America was organized to play a useful and defined part in the advancement of the sacred obligation of American citizenship. What is the sacred obligation? All right, let's go to political slavery. It's in the same Moorish literature. On mine, it's on page 37. Let's see. Let's see if we can find it in here. Yeah, so okay, here we go. Political slavery. Okay, so we're here because in this decree that went out to all governors, grand sheiks, and head officials of temples, Prophet Noble Drew Ali said the Moorish Science Temple of America was organized to play a useful and defined part in the advancement of the sacred obligation of American citizenship. Does anybody have any idea what that sacred obligation is? All right, it's right here in political slavery. Anytime a man or woman fails or refuses to cast a sacred ballot at the polls, they separate themselves from all rights of an American citizen. For surely this is the one connecting medium for a citizen to his nation. Y'all get that? So the temple was organized to play a useful and defined part in the advancement of the sacred obligation. We see that we're supposed to be organizing politically. All right. As the Moorish Moorish Divine National Movement was founded for the uniting of the Asiatic states of North America. And right here in political slavery, it says, for surely this is the one connecting medium for a citizen to his nation. Right. So with this being understood now that we're to organize ourselves, to have economic strategies, and also political. That's the social portion. Politically unified. So Joe Biden can't get on. This is what they do when they deal with so-called African Americans, blacks, Negroes, coloreds. This is what they do. When they want your support, they say, well, what's the popular Negro station? They're all listening to what's that show, The Breakfast Club. Yeah, you can just get on there. So Joe Biden gets on The Breakfast Club, and Charlemagne the God presses him just a little bit, saying, well, what are you going to do for us in order for us to vote for you? And all he had to do, I mean, he didn't have to say anything, you know, but he said, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. And he tried to use the black vernacular. You ain't black. Y'all ain't black if you don't vote for me. And that's it, right? That's political slavery. Okay, so to finish this off, they became no more than belated beasts of burden. There are reasons why certain classes who are more or less independent take no part in politics, since they get nothing out of such in the way of material gain, right? So it doesn't even matter if we don't vote or not, because the ones who do, they're locked in. They have to vote Democrat. This is no less than a political slave, since they refuse to voice their sentiments at the polls. Another form of political slavery, which is probably more prevalent among the less independent classes that are being forced into one of the major parties. And that's where our people are. And that's really all I wanted to say on that. But I just wanted to point that out, though. Let me go back to all governors, because it's saying, okay, was to play and organize and to organize and play a useful and defined part in the advancement of the sacred obligation. So we're to be, not only are we to be voting, but we're to be active politically. We're to have our own political party looking out for our own good. Islam, I see you, Brother David Sell.
Peace. Question. So say like voting rights doesn't get renewed. How is it that the temple is gonna make it so we're able to vote then? How does that work?
Islam. So that, and for anyone who doesn't understand what he's talking about, right? I'm thinking like every 20 or so years, I don't know the exact amount of time, but every 20 or so years, they have to renew the rights to vote for the Negroes, for the slave class. Right? What do they call us today? African American? They have to renew our rights to vote. Matter of fact, after Biden said the little stupid mess saying that if you don't vote for me, you ain't black, he also said that he voted to renew our rights to vote. That's one of the great things he did for us, right? So they have to renew the rights to vote for us, okay? And it's a good question, because you have this thing called the Constitution. It guarantees rights to all people. Why do African Americans in 2021 still have to have their rights to vote renewed? And I think it happened, like the last time it happened was only maybe 4 years ago or something like that. And they actually talked about it in the media a little bit. They didn't make a big deal out of it, but they actually talked about it, right? So as Brother Seymour Bay, we have the privilege to vote as Black people, right? But one of the things that we have to do, because this isn't just going to happen magically, just because we say that we're Moors, we're Moorish Americans, we have to assert ourselves politically. We have to assert ourselves to make sure that it's understood on the record that we are recognized, that we have self-identified. We are saying who we are. We're not going along with the categories that have been created for us. You know, I don't care if new category has to be created or whatever. We're asserting that this is who we are, okay? We don't fall up under whatever privileges have been extended to us, I guess, through the civil rights movement. There was like a Voting Rights Act or something that was passed. We don't need that, right? The Prophet took care of this actually almost 100 years ago. Okay. The only thing that's been happening is that we haven't, we haven't as a collective been moving on it. Our people have been through a lot since that time, and we're just now starting to come back into it. So we just have to assert ourselves and make sure that it's understood who we are. Might not be able to save everybody this go around, but we know who we are. We have the same rights as everyone else. Also, to speak on what the brother David Sell was saying, right now, at this point in time, we're just saying that we have the same rights as everyone else. Some of the Moors, well, a lot of Moors getting this information and thinking like right out the bat, just because you know who you are, you're all of a sudden above everyone. And it's like you don't go from the bottom of the totem pole to the top just because you learned some stuff, right? You don't even have any hospitals and schools, and you're not even growing your own food. People can cut off the electricity for you. We're not there yet. All right. So we're just saying we have the same rights and privileges as everyone else. And that's it. And that's actually that's what was in there, what I was reading earlier, right? We understand that we must respect and, get, for the most part, get along with our fellow citizens. But we're asserting that, okay, that's not who we are. We're not Black or African American or whatever been calling our people. That's a misnomer. This is who we are. And doing it as a collective, even if there's only 10,000 of us, even if the numbers are small, that's still enough to be recognized and for it to be understood that we're a real people, even if it's a real tribe, because 10,000, that's like a tribe. That's a small nation, right? But we're real people, and we actually know who we are. So people can't tell us who we are. We're just letting it be known, putting it on the record. This is who we are as a collective. So we don't fall up under the Christian Black codes and these several laws that pegged us into a small box, that made it, they had things like they made it illegal for us to own land and all types of things. We don't fall up under that. All right. But yeah, and just in case you didn't get that though, David, so for the most part, it's just letting it be known who we are on the record. And, like here in Ohio, letting it be known we're here, we're organized as the Moorish Science Temple of America, we're Moorish American, and just making sure that it's understood. So just in case they decide not to renew the rights to vote, which they're not going to do because that's going to make too many people wake up. They're not going to do that. But just in case, it's understood. This is who we are. Going back to this, though, as this will have been our very first convention and most interesting one ever held in this city, it was featured by delegates from 15 different states, from local branch temples and subordinate temples, which have been established for the uplifting of fallen humanity. During this, our first convention, in sessions specific of general work and civic accomplishments were reported by the grand sheiks of each branch temple and subordinate temple. This is an example of what's to be going on at convention, right? Each different temple coming from all across the nation. They're all coming together, letting it be known what work they're doing in their areas, what's working for them, right? What civil accomplishments were reported, right? They're putting Moors into office. That's another thing. We have our own block vote. We have our own party even. We can put our own candidates up. We don't care about Democrat, Republican, any of that. We want to secure certain things for us in exchange for our support, right? We want to play the game just like everyone else does. As each grand sheik was required to give a reporting of his temple and the governor, and then the continued growth and development of this divine movement. And so this is what's supposed to be happening at convention, right? So it's not like we're coming together, people are going to be singing and dancing. That could be there, but that's not all that it's supposed to be about, right? Just entertainment. eating and entertainment, right? Business is getting handled. Well, this is what's working in Arizona. This is what's working over here in Ohio. Just working, growing, and moving as a unit nationally and then also locally. And this is why it says next, as each Grand Sheik gave their report about the growth of business and enterprises, because back in the day, they were having grocery stores, cleaners like laundromats and stuff like that, moving companies. The example of collective efforts showed that the members of the Moorish Science Temple of America and their leaders have enacted a sound economic program and are blazing the trail and marking the pathway over which our posterity can travel unhampered and unafraid. And so they're starting businesses. They're purchasing land. You know why? Because that's practical. That's something that you can do then and now to empower yourself, right? They're not getting together, plotting and planning on how we're going to take this from there. You know, no, they're just moving for real in real time. Getting businesses, growing them, finding out what's working and what's not working so that they're not all making the same mistakes. Prophet Noble Drew Ali stated that it must also be kept in mind that no great movement can take definite shape in 2 or 3 years so as to be error-proof. Prophet Noble Drew Ali further stated, however, through accumulating experience, each annual convention ought to bear witness a more perfect and wider functioning organization. So right now, it's like it's square one, representing the organized experience of men and women members throughout the country and possibly in time the world over. And continuing, Prophet Noble Drew Ali said, constructive criticism from sympathetic friends in and outside our ranks is welcome. I just wanted to read this last portion, though. This is to all governors, grand sheiks, and head officials of all temples, part 2. And listen to this. During this convention period, the Prophet Noble Drew Ali said on the 17th of October that he was going to appoint 7 men tried and true and accepted by you. And on the very next day, Noble Drew Ali stepped forward from the chamber room and declared that he now had his number and said that the grand body had accepted his choice in the setting of the Supreme Grand Council of the Moorish Science Temple of America. And Prophet Noble Drew Ali also declared what their duties were in conjunction with that of the grand body, which consists of all executive rulers, chiefs, rulers, governor. Prophet Noble Drew Ali said that both are to work hand in hand with each other, and those who act as in Supreme Council duties were to continue on with each other, and those who act as in a Supreme Council duties were to continue on with the day-to-day functions of this divine movement with the grand body, while the grand body was to intercede that the Prophet Noble Drew Ali was the law and that at the head of this movement. Now, the Prophet announced that the following Adept Chamber members would be seated on the Supreme Grand Council. Prophet Noble Drew Ali, Supreme Grand Head and Chairman, number 1. Number 2, Brother Emily Ill, Supreme Grand Sheik and Grand Governor, Temple 1. Brother James Lomax Bey, Supreme Grand Governor and Grand Governor, Temple 4. Brother Richard Ross Bey doesn't have his title. Brother Claude Green Bey, Supreme Business Manager. Brother Blackwell Bey doesn't have a title. Sister Pearl Ali, Supreme Grand Secretary. The Prophet Noble Drew Ali then said, follow me and you will be happy. The Prophet also announced that a per capita tax had been voted in by the Grand Body and concurred with by the Supreme Grand Council during the second sitting of the Supreme Grand Council. So in this is like, you know, in school, they teach us about the founding fathers, and it's all these dudes with powdered wigs, and it, you know, it's George Washington and all them. Well, for us, right, these are the founding members. These are the ones who established our government. Okay, which is also why our Independence Day is on the 20th, our Authority Day, when the Prophet announced, right, officially established this Islamic nation state. But in this, what I just read, so the Prophet announced that the Grand Body had accepted his choice. The Grand Body is one of the three branches of government. He created the Supreme Grand Council. The Supreme Grand Council is the judicial branch, just like the Supreme Court. The grand body, that's the legislative branch. The grand body is consisting of all the grand sheiks or all the grand governors in all the different states, all the different cities. Those are the legislators, just like your congressmen, your senators. Okay? And also there's the executive portion, which would be the grand sheik and chairman of the whole temple. All right? And also the supreme grand sheik. All right? So this was important because he had transparency. It's saying that the prophet declared what their duties were, right? Because he's having to explain. This is something new for us. We had been broken down to the point where we didn't even have our own government. Even though our people played a part in the creation of this nation, even though this entire nation, what it was set up off of, is based off of our ancient government. We'd fallen away from that. Our families had been broken up, right? All types of things, turmoil. It was war, and then slavery. So this had happened to us. We'd gotten away from it. So this was returned to us by the prophet. It's extremely important. He gave us a government. And then it's also announced that a per capita tax had been voted in by the grand body and concurred with by the Supreme Grand Council, right? So now we have a way of raising finances at the national level, right? Because the temples were collecting dues. Okay, that goes to each local temple. But now they're taking a per capita tax that's going to our national treasury, right? So even if all of us don't get on board, even if it was just the people who consider themselves Moors, we can raise finances. We're not a beggar nation. We can do for ourselves. Okay? And this is extremely important. So now we have a government, and it's not a broke down, funky government, because we have our own finances. We have businesses. We're kicking back to our own local level at the temple level, and then we're kicking back to our national treasury. So we're raising finances. In theory, you know, when we do this, when we take this seriously, it's powerful. It's like overnight. It doesn't matter how many of us it is, because let me show you something else. It doesn't even have to be all of us, right? A lot of us are still slaves and happy. Who cares? It doesn't have to be all of us, because in our state, like where we are right now, I'm trying to pull up an article for you. And this article is a couple years old. But it was saying how like African Americans, I think, if they consider themselves a nation, they'd be like in the top 10 richest nations in the world. Okay, so I'm bringing this up for a reason, right? So it doesn't even have to be all of us. Just a portion of us who is smart enough, who get it, that we have to look out for ourselves.
Come on, Smokey.
Right? Just by us doing that, we're powerful and we can take care of ourselves. We can enter into trade with other nations. And they will hear us out and take us seriously because we have resources. We have a national treasury, right? Whatever forms of industry we go into, you know, as a collective, or that we specialize in, it will be powerful, right? Because we have the resources to do it. And so this is really what it's about. It's not about like, you know, just saying, oh, we're more, and trying to act like all of a sudden these people who are not only domiciling here, who don't only live here, they're also in control of the land. They control this stuff. It's not pretending. It's not about pretending that they have to bow down to you because you know who you are. That's not going to work. That's not realistic. I can't even pretend to believe that that's going to work, because it's not. But this article is from 2014, and it says Black Americans, Moors, if we were a nation, we are, we just don't know it. We'd be the 10th largest in the world. Talking about the money, not the amount of people. $2.2 trillion every year. So that amount grows, you know, it grows every year. So 7 years ago, we brought in 2.2 trillion. That would be our GDP if we were a country. And if you look at the list, like showing the countries, we would be like, we're in the top 10. It's got the European Union, United States, China, Japan, Germany, France, all these European countries. Only one that's not European is Brazil. Brazil has like almost 200 million people. And we got just as much money as them, and we don't have as many people. Okay? There's not 200 million of us here. So that means we're making a lot of money. The problem is, of course, we give it away. You probably heard this, how the money, as soon as we make it, it goes outside of the community. So this is about us creating our own communities, having our own banks, having our own treasury that we're all kicking in. So our government, look, it's not rinky dink. The council, the grand body, what we have would be powerful because we have our own finances, and it's not something that's being loaned to us by outsiders, by some other nation. It's not something that was given to us by foreigners, given to us by Jews or Europeans or anyone else. It's something that we're doing ourselves. You guys get that, right? That's how it's powerful. And that's very practical. No magic and mystery in that. Not saying that anything that the prophet brought wasn't mystical, or that there isn't anything else to this that we may not understand yet. Just saying that the way that they moved was practical. We build it and we see the results. Okay? Now the prophet let us know that all of this land was ours. Okay? Obviously, at this point in time, you ain't getting it back just by claiming that you were more. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Right? But if you have resources, if you have your own legal team, right, who's just getting paid, so you're paying them just to do the research, to do what's necessary to bring up a case to get the land that's owed to you. Right now, you can really go about doing it. All right. So anyone talking about anything else, not trying to knock it, just trying to put it in a proper perspective. That's not what it was about. This is what the prophet brought. Very real, very practical. Just wanted to share that, though, from Moorish literature. If anyone else wants to read that further, that was to all grand governors, grand sheiks, and head officials of all temples. And read something else, too. I don't remember what the other one was.
Peace. Prophet announces authority and political slavery.
Islam. Gratitude, brother. So all that's in the Moorish literature. But I just wanted to put it in a proper perspective so that we know, like this, this is very real. It's very practical and actually easy to understand how it works. It's about us working together as a collective now within what we have. Okay, so it's not being stupid either, saying, well, we have a government, so y'all got to bow down to us. It's like, nah, now that's for us to see ourselves as a nation, from being, just Black African-American, to seeing ourselves as a nation and not starting in slavery, seeing ourselves as people that descend from the creators of civilization now. That's really an internal thing that will develop into something more greater over time. That makes sense? All right. Islam. And that's why, though, people don't have this understanding, and that's why we're seeing what we're seeing play out in the news. But on that note, though, I'm happy that news, mainstream news, like all over the world, they're saying the word rise of the Moors. It sounds good because that's actually what is happening here. It is. It's just that we're at square one. we have a lot of work to do. All right. Let's go ahead and go into our Quran, though, in chapter 15. And if we could, please, can we get a volunteer to read chapter 15?
Islam, I'll read
Islam.
chapter 15. First of all, I rise and give honors, give praise to Allah, give honors to our prophet Noble Drew Ali, to forerunner Marcus Garvey, to all the Moors on the call and the bar. Okay, chapter 15. Jesus goes to the wilderness for self-examination, where he remains 40 days, is subjected to 3 temptations. He overcomes, returns to the camps of John, and begins teaching. Oh no, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong part. I'm on the wrong. Yeah. Sorry. Leave out the wrong chapter.
Islam, that's on page 23.
Okay, I got you. This one, I'm almost there. Just had it. Okay, yeah, got it. Okay, the harbinger had paved the way. The logos had been introduced to men as love made manifest, and he must now begin his divine ministry. And he went forth into the wilderness to be alone with Allah, that he might look into his inner heart and note its strength and worthiness. And with himself he talked. He said, my lower self is strong. By many ties I am bound down to carnal life. Have I the strength to overcome and give my life a willing sacrifice for men? When I shall stand before the face of man and they demand a proof of my messiahship, what will I say? And then the tempter came and said, if you be son of Allah, command these stones to turn to bread. And Jesus said, who is it that demands a test? Is it no sign that one is son of Allah because he does a miracle? The devils can do mighty things. Did not the Gentile magicians do great things before the Pharaoh? My words and deeds in all the walks of life shall be the proof of my messiahship. And the tempter said, if you will go into Jerusalem and from the temple pinnacle cast down yourself to the earth, the people will believe that you are the Messiah sent from Allah. This you can surely do. For did not David say, he gives his angels charge concerning you, and with their will they uphold lest you should fall. And Jesus said, I may not tempt the Lord my God Allah. And then the tempter said, look forth upon the world. Behold its honors and its fame. Behold its pleasures and its wealth. If you will give your life for these, they shall be yours. But Jesus said, away from me all tempting thoughts. My heart is fixed. I spurn this carnal self with all its vain ambition and its pride. For 40 days did Jesus wrestle with his carnal self. His higher self prevailed. He then was hungry, but his friends had found him, and they ministered to him. Then Jesus left the wilderness, and in the consciousness of holy breath, he came into the camps of John and taught Islamism.
Islamism. Gratitude, brother. So just listening to this with Jesus being tempted while he's in the wilderness, we know as we look at the scriptures, doesn't matter if it's the Quran, if it's the Bible, it doesn't matter if it's the Quran is revealed to the Prophet Muhammad. We know that all of the characters, everything that's in here is actually speaking about us, ourselves, our own mind state, right? So as Jesus is in the wilderness, he's being tempted by the devil, the tempter. We know that this is all within yourself, right? The devil is nothing but the lower self, your carnal nature, right? And right away, he recognizes that the carnal nature is strong, right? He's bound to it, and the ties to it are strong. So when he's being tempted, right? His first temptations are him struggling with this tempter that's trying to get him to prove his messiahship, and they want him to do miracles. They want him to do irrational things, right, to prove himself. Okay, and then the second is about just using the wisdom that he has for self gain, right, instead of to uplift fallen humanity. All right. And this is just something that happens to us all. Like, this applies to all of us on some level, right? Where we have thoughts that are emanating from the carnal self. And when you dwell in your higher self, when you're using that higher aspect of you, right, you can recognize these thoughts. You can even speak to yourself. When you hear these thoughts, you know that that's coming from the carnal mind. And so even though it's not spoken of in this chapter, what is Jesus using to overcome these types of thoughts, right? He's using self-talk, and he's using the invisible tools that we have, the tools of the workshop of the mind, right? When you use those tools of the workshop of the mind, let's go to that chapter. But when you use the tools of the workshop of the mind to square your thoughts, you want to make sure that they're within the bounds of righteousness. And this is important because just this little temptation thing, this is something that's happened to us all the time. It's not always something that sounds all evil or crazy, tell them throw yourself off of the temple. Like, it's not like that. It's all types of little situations that we overlook, right? And these are thoughts that are emanating from the carnal mind. It's not even a big deal. Sometimes it's just stuff like, you're in the house, you're good on food, but you want to eat. It's because you're bored. That's the carnal mind. The carnal body, it just wants pleasure. It just wants sensations, right? You're not occupying your mind. As soon as we tell the children, you have to get off the game, just stop playing, clean up or something, all of a sudden they want to eat. Right? So it's not a bad thing. It's not like terrible, but it's the mind. It's not occupied anymore. The carnal mind's like, okay, feed me. Let's get something good to eat. Right? If you give in to that, if you give into it too much, right, it's going to cause all types of health issues. Right? So it's not always like, just evil and good and all this stuff. It's just like basically the carnal mind, right? You know where it dwells at. You know what the carnal body, you know what the lower self is about. You know that if you follow that, if you allow yourself to be under that, if that's the one making the decisions for you, right, we're not going to be successful. It's not looking out for your good. The lower self is traveling the earth to and fro, seeking whom it may devour. So once it's done with you, on to the next, right? You can eat yourself to death, literally. So we have to be able to recognize these types of thoughts when they come in. So we're given the these invisible tools, right? The tools of the workshop of the mind. If we could go to chapter 5, verse 12. Well, actually, let's go to verse 11. And then he went forth with his parents on their way to Nazareth, and then they reached their home. He wrought with Joseph as a carpenter. We're talking about Jesus as a young boy. All of this is metaphorical, right? Symbolic. One day as he was bringing forth the tools for work, he said, these tools remind me of the ones we handle in the workshop of the mind, where things are made of thought and where we build up character. Okay? We use the square to measure all our lines, to straighten out the crooked places of the way and make the corners of our conduct square. We use the compass to draw the circles around our passions and desires to keep them in the bounds of righteousness. Right? So he's using this, even though it's not spoken about, because it doesn't have to be. It was mentioned in chapter 5, and we need to take notes because these are divine instructions from the Holy Prophet. There's a reason that's at the top of every page in our Quran. So we're not to overlook any of this. That's another thing why it's important to master the basics. There's so much information out there. Not saying people can't read books and watch videos and take in all this stuff. That's fine. But if you're doing that, make sure we're actually reading the Quran, not just on Holy Day. Like, go through this, the Quran, the Quran questions. Look over the Constitution and the Moorish literature, and take your time. Okay, because these tools in chapter 5 are something that we need to be using on a regular basis. So you're using that circle, that compass, to draw the circles around your passions and desires to keep them in the bounds of righteousness. We use the axe to cut away the knotty, useless, and ungainly parts and make the character symmetrical. We use the hammer to drive home the truth and pound it in until it is a part of every part, right? Living off of truth. These are the also the 5 principles, divine principles: love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. We use the plane to smooth the rough, uneven surface of joint and block and board that go to build the temple for the truth. The chisel, line, the plummet, and saw all have their uses in the workshop of the mind. Okay, and let's go ahead and that's in chapter 5. I'm gonna go ahead and get out of there and end there. But I would advise going back over chapter 5 too. I read from verses 13 to 19, but I would advise going back over chapter 5 too, right? Because these invisible tools are what we're supposed to use on a regular basis. This is how you overcome the carnal self. Now it says here in verse 16, for 40 days did Jesus wrestle with his carnal self, his higher self prevailed. Okay, so the carnal self is always there, and it sounds just like you because it's the body's consciousness. So the thoughts that emanate from it, like I was saying, it could just be to just eat some food that you don't even need to eat because you're not hungry. It's not always evil and terrible sounding. They sound good. And when the thoughts come through, it's you. You think you're thinking it, but it's really the body. The body is alive. All right? There's a still small voice, this buried deep in there for most of us, so deep that we don't even hear it. Okay? And so what we're doing is working on subduing that big loud voice, subduing that carnal self to the point where at one point where our higher self is coming through louder. All right? And where we can even recognize now these thoughts that are emanating from the carnal self, from that lower self, so that we can recognize it and we know. And when you're at the point where you can recognize those thoughts, you're not misstepping. There's no way you can misstep. And that's actually where we're all supposed to go. So eventually we will all overcome this. But that's really what this is about. This battle is discussed in the Quran. The Quran is revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, right? This is something that's been going on for a long time. So you'll find it in several scriptures. You'll find it in the Bhagavad Gita, right? You'll find it in ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt was all about subduing the lower self. Everything, every temple they carved, anything, if they had any knowledge, right? Because things got dumber over time. But when you go back into ancient Egypt or the ancient Olmecs over here, anything they carved, it's going to be symbolic of subduing the lower self. All right? Because ultimately that's what we're supposed to do. That's where your power is. All right? So that's what this is all about. And doing this on a regular basis, right? Not going off into the woods for 40 days and 40 nights. No, every day. Always. Islam, I see you, Sister Douglas L.
Islam, first and foremost, I'd like to rise and give perfect praise to our Father God Allah. I would like to rise and give honors to his prophet, Noble Drew Ali, the last prophet in these days and times. I like to rise and give honors to all you Moors in attendance and everything Moorish. I like to go back to keys 16 and 17 for 1 minute, just to kind of go off of what resonated with me. It was because we have done the 40-day master system together as a group. And that 40 days is so significant. And just the fact that Jesus went into the wilderness for those 40 days and he had to deal with himself, with not only his higher self, but also his lower self. And we all know that our lower self is strong. It says it right in here. But what is really meant for us to understand by this is that in meditation, it usually takes a lot of practice for us to access our Allah in man, the God within us. And a lot of people, they quit before they reach this feeling of oneness with everything. And that brings us to key 17 when it talks about the holy breath, because he reached that higher consciousness. And if we go back to key 51, it talks about the holy breath, Islam, and it tells us what the holy breath is. It says all we can say is it is great, it is good, it was, it is, and evermore to be. Amen. And it's like, because the prophet was an Egyptian adept, that made me go and look up Amen. We know the connection with the ancient Egyptian spiritual system that Noble Drew Ali linked us back with this divine and national movement. So that made me go and see, why did he put Amen at the end of that, right? At the end of explaining what the holy breath is. And when I go and look it up on Google, it says, okay, Amen is a God, right? It means so be it at the end of a prayer. So be it. That means like, so mote it be, it is done. But we have to understand, Amen or Amun is depicted as a sphinx. And we understand that the sphinx, the body of the beast, is letting us know that our lower selves exist. This cardinal self is like the beast form of us, of who we are. And also as a human with the hawk head, letting us know that we can access a higher, more spiritual self. And that is our higher self. And Jesus reached that during his 40-day meditation and being with himself and studying himself over and over again for 40 days. That's why the prophet said, when you ask me what to study, I will say yourself. And when you ask me again, I say study self again, because it takes time, Islam. And he reached that oneness and that divinity. Okay, Amen also means the hidden, or the hiddenness in divinity, the divinity in the power of the Son. So, okay, we know we're the Son of God. Islam and Jesus is the Son of God. So that just resonated with me because it made me feel a more powerful connection to how great I am, how great we all are. And if we are consistent in our meditations, if we stay clean and pure of heart, that we can access this and live out our days. Islam, I yield the floor.
All right, Islam, sister, gratitude, and definitely, you already know I agree with you. With that, like you said, with the Sphinx, right? It has the body of the beast, the head of man, right? That's mastery over the lower self. This is another statue from ancient Egypt. You see, I think this is a pharaoh Khufu or Khafre, right? When you're looking at it from the front, it just looks like his headdress is coming down over his shoulders. When you turn around to the side and the back, you see Horus or the hawk sitting on his back with his wings, you know, coming over his shoulders. And that's just showing unification with the higher self. Once again, higher self ruling over the lower self, right? So this was extremely important. It was so important. This was carved into stone. This is how come when the prophet set our government up, he couldn't just forget the whole spirituality aspect and act like the spiritual realm isn't what all this physical realm comes from, right? All of this is emanating from the spirit realm, okay? And so while he's doing that, yeah, we're going to take care of our earthly needs, right? We're working together to get our economics together, all the stuff we were talking about before, you know, handling the politics and things like that. But also, we're not going to neglect this spiritual duty that we have, right? As it says in verse 15, we want to take all this home. Verse 15 says, but Jesus said, away from me all tempting thoughts. My heart is fixed. I spurned this carnal self with all its vain ambition and its pride. Okay, vain ambition and pride. That's where most of our thoughts are emanating from. That's what's pumped and promoted to us all day long, right? If we listen to rap music, that's all it is. That's it. All lower carnal thoughts. And if we follow that lifestyle, which a lot of our people do, not everybody, but a lot of our people do, they're getting caught up in it and not even knowing why they're suffering. You don't know why you're suffering, right? You can't be out here listening to Meg Thee Stallion and then trying to live like that and be successful. It's not going to work. In real life, you're going to have some misery, right? There's so many ways that could go wrong for you. And so that's just an example, but, you know, this is important. So we can't leave that aspect of it out too. And that's why, you know, a lot of Moors that don't know this, they're suffering, right? We can't leave out that. So that whole battle, you know, with the lower self, it's an ongoing thing. So even with Jesus being a mastermind, he's still having thoughts from the lower self. The thing that we are to do is to practice and work on subduing our lower self so that we recognize those thoughts, so that you can even speak to it in your head. You're saying, get back, beast. You know, you may even have a nickname for it. You know that. Whereas the normal person, that's all they are. They don't even have a difference because the lower self is so loud. They don't know that Allah's in them. All right. And so that's really all that I had to share about that measure. But this is a big portion of it. You know, the spiritual aspect, right? So, you know, physically, we're taking care of ourselves, building up what we have to do. But then personally, right, where nobody can see, in your home, each of us are supposed to be doing this work, studying this and putting it into practice. So those invisible tools of the workshop of the mind, we're to be using these on a regular basis to make sure that our thoughts, actions, and deeds are lining up with righteousness, right? And that's an everyday practice. But the great thing is that, doesn't it say in the Bible that God said, you take one step towards me, I'll take 2 steps towards you? I believe that's in there somewhere. I'm sorry, I can't tell you exactly where. But this is basically how it works. So every time we work on subduing the lower self, right, more of the higher self gets revealed. And as we do this in unison, we can rule from this. We can rule our societies from this aspect of ourselves. And then as the world is following us, even in folly, even as we're sagging our pants, thinking that it's cool to be immoral and messed up, doing drugs, selling drugs and all this stupid mess, they're still following us. So imagine how the world will change once we change ourselves, because that's what it always is. We can't be out here trying to force people to say, oh, Black Lives Matter, when this is something that was forced on us, right? It alludes to slavery. We can't change the world. Like, all we have to do is change ourselves. We change ourselves, everyone's going to try to be the best version of themselves as well, because they will follow us. They even follow us to hell. And that's what everyone's doing right now. So it's all on us. Nobody else is going to do it. And on that note, though, I want to go ahead and yield the floor. Does anybody else have any questions about chapter 15? Okay. If not, does anyone have any questions in general? No questions at all?
Islam, I got a question. It's off topic. It's on a whole different chapter. Can I presume though? Can I go ahead? I was
Islam,
reading.
open floor, Islam.
Okay, cool. So why does the prophet in his wisdom say the Arabians, the seeds of Haggar, and then after that, and that's in verse. I'm reading that chapter 45. It goes in. I don't know how he's breaking down the genealogy of us starting the chapter. Verse 3: the Egyptians were the Hamathites, and of the direct descendants of Mizraim, the Arabians, the seeds of Haggar, right? And Japanese and Chinese. Then you go down to verse 7, says the Turks are the true descendants of Haggar, who are the chief protectors of the Islamic creed of Mecca. So I just was trying to understand what the prophet was saying. And then also because I was looking, trying to understand the whole reason I was trying to understand the Garden of Eden being in the holy city of Mecca. So I went through some Islamic thing I typed on YouTube or whatever. And there's some people, I found a video that says that Mecca was in Turkey, not in Arabia, right? So I just found that. And then also I found another video that says Mecca was in northern Syria and not Arabia. If you got any insight on that, why did the prophet make a delineation between that and peace and love?
Islam, brother, great questions, man. You stumped me on that. Like, seriously, I'm gonna have to get my weight up. Do you have any insight to share?
Islam, no, I don't. Besides, 'cause I was just looking, I was trying to understand the Turks, which I guess I would say the Ottomans, but the prophet didn't say the Ottomans, right? And it was different kind of Turks, right? It was the Turkanans. That's some of there was people down by what you call Abyssinia or Ethiopia, right? Commonly known as Ethiopia, right? They went by Turks, right? And then you got Turks over here in America, right? Like Turks and Caicos, right? All of that. And we also know that the Ottomans was known as the Turks too, right? So I don't understand why, like, that's what I'm trying to understand. And then when we say Haggar, right? Haggar gave birth to Ishmael, right? So, I was just trying to understand that, like, what's the difference? Because the way I'm reading the genealogy and the way the prophet lines it up, right, is like it starts in 2. The Moorish, who were the ancient Moabites and the founders of the holy city of Mecca, right? So it says the Moorish, so that's who the Moors are. Moors, ancient Moabites. Then it goes into the Egyptians, who were the Hamathites. So Egyptians, those are the Hamathites and the direct descendants of Mizraim. Then it gets to the Arabians, to see the Haggar, and then Japanese and Chinese, and then the Hindus. And then it breaks down. It says the descendants of the ancient Canaanites, Hittites, and Moabites from the land of Canaan, right? So I'm guessing the Japanese, Chinese, Hindus, though, that goes back to being descendants of Canaanite, Hittites, and Moabites, But I don't know proper, my bad, I'm getting long-winded. Let me dock the boat. What I'm saying is I don't got nothing, but I wonder why Arabians and Turks, we know them as two different, but it says one is the seed of Haggar and one is the true descendant. So that's I don't know what I'm peace. That's the question. You feel me? And I have no insight. But I sent a video on the Garnet. I'm not the Garnet, even Mecca being in northern Syria, and the other video with Mecca being in Turkey, Islam.
So yeah, I'll have to do some research. I guess we both have to do some research because you stumped me. I don't have the answer. Islam. All right. So yeah, so before we close out, are there any other questions? Anyone else have any questions? All right. Okay, I want to announce without further ado, we're going to go into the closing of the meeting. See, Sister Lachey L, would you please read the additional laws? Islam sister. I see your mic's unmuted, but we can't hear you. Okay, maybe she might be having audio issues. All right, hang on one second. All right, sister. All is well. All is well. I have it. Additional laws for Moorish Americans by the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Act 1. Grand sheiks and governors and heads of all temples, all businesses. Each said temple must be approved by the Prophet Noble Drew Ali before acting upon by any members, let it be finance, property, or any line of life that will cause the members to sacrifice finances, etc., that will cause the support of any group of members. Any former officer that violates these laws is subject to be removed from his office under a heavy restriction, etc., by the Prophet or the Grand Sheikh. Act 2. All members are to attend their ADEP meetings and their public meetings promptly. If a member is found standing around on their meeting period, shall be fined 50 cents on the first case, and on the second, he will be fined $1, which will go on your emergency fund. If member is working, his monthly dues must be paid. And if he has money in the bank, he must subscribe for as much as he is able to the Moorish Uplifting Fund, because it takes finance to uplift the nation. Act 3, it is the lawful and divine duty of every good member, if he's able in finance, to aid me in saving the nation. And if he does not, he is an enemy to the cause of uplifting his own people. And justice must catch you. Let it be he or she according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, as I have the power invested in my hands, and I will have to enforce the law in order to save the nation. Act 4, all members, while up making a public speech, must not use any assertion against the American flag or speak radical against the church or any member of any organized group, because we are to teach love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Act 5, all members must promptly attend their meetings and send their children to Sunday school, and the teacher must confirm himself to the questionnaire, and let every member exercise his 5 senses who is able to do so, because out from your Sunday school comes the guiders of the nation. Act 6, with us all members must proclaim their nationality, and we are teaching our people their nationality and their divine creed, that they may know that they are part and parcel of this said government, and know that they are not Negroes, colored folks, black people, or Ethiopians, because these names were given to slaves by slaveholders in 1779 and lasted until 1865 during the time of slavery. But this is a new era of time now, and all men now must proclaim their free national name to be recognized by the government in which they live in the nations of the earth. This is the reason why Allah, the great God of the universe, ordained Noble Drew Ali, the prophet, to redeem his people from their sinful ways. The Moorish Americans are the descendants of the ancient Moabites who inhabited the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa. Act 7, all members must promptly attend their meetings and become a part and parcel of all uplifting acts of the Moorish Science Temple. Members must pay their dues and keep in line with all necessities of the Moorish Science Temple. Then you are entitled to the name of faithful. Husband, you must support your wife and children. Wife, you must obey your husband and take care of your children and look after the duties of your household. Sons and daughters must obey father and mother and be industrious and become part of the uplifting of fallen humanity. All Moorish Americans must keep their hearts and minds pure with love and their bodies clean with water. This divine covenant is from your holy prophet, Noble Drew Ali, through the guidance of his father God Allah. Islam, Islam, Islamism. Gratitude, Brother Jones Bay, for that Bible verse. Islam. All right. And we're going to go ahead and read the divine warning. The citizens of all free national governments, according to their national constitution, are of one family, bearing one free national name. Those who fail to recognize the free national name of their constitutional government are classed as undesirables and are subject to all inferior names and abuses and mistreatments that the citizens care to bestow upon them. And it is a sin for any group of people to violate the national constitutional laws of a free national government and cling to the names and the principles that delude to slavery. I, the prophet, was prepared by the great God Allah to warn my people to repent from their sinful ways and go back to the state of mind of their forefathers' divine and national principles. They will be law abiders and receive their divine right as citizens according to the free national constitution that was prepared for all free national beings. They are to claim their own free national name and religion. There's but one issue for them to be recognized by this government and of the earth, and it comes only through the connection of the Moorish divine national movement, which is incorporated in this government and recognized by all other nations of the world. And through it, they and their children can receive their divine rights unmolested by other citizens, that they can cast a free national ballot at the polls under the free national constitution of the state's government and not under a granted privilege as has been the existing condition for many generations. You who doubt whether I, the prophet, and my principles are right for the redemption of my people, go to those that know law in the city hall and among the officials in your government and ask them under an intelligent tone, and they will be glad to render you a favorable reply, for they are glad to see me bring you out of darkness into light. Money doesn't make the man. It is free national standards and power that makes a man and a nation. The wealth of all national governments, gold and silver and commerce, belong to the citizens alone, and without your national citizenship by name and principles, you have no true wealth. And I'm hereby calling on all true citizens to stand for a free national free government and the enforcement of the Constitution to help me in my great missionary work, because I need support from all true American citizens of the United States of America. Help me to save my people who have fallen from the constitutional laws of the government. I am depending on your support to get them back to the constitutional fold. Again, that they will learn to love instead of hate. And will live according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, supporting our free national constitution of the United States of America. I love my people and I desire their unity and mine back to their own free national and divine standard, because day by day they've been violating the national and constitutional laws of their government by claiming names and principles that are unconstitutional. If Italians, Greeks, English, Chinese, Japanese, Turks, and Arabians are forced to proclaim their free national name and religion before the constitutional government of the United States of America, it is no more than right that the law should be enforced upon all American citizens alike in all governments in other governments when a man is born and raised there and asks for his national descent name, and if he fails to give it, he is misused, imprisoned, or exiled. Any group of people that fail to answer up to the constitutional standards of law by name and principles, because to be a citizen of any government, you must claim your national descent name, because they place their trust upon issue and names formed by their forefathers. The word Negro deludes in the Latin language to the word nigger, the same as the word color deludes to anything that is painted, varnished, and dyed. And every nation must bear a national descent name of their forefathers, because honoring thy fathers and thy mothers, your days will be lengthened upon this earth. These names have never been recognized by any true American citizens of this day. Through your free national name, you are known and recognized by all nations of the earth that are recognized by said national government in which they live. The 14th and 15th Amendments brought the North and South in unit, placing the Southerners, who were at that time without power, with the constitutional body of power. And at that time, 1865, the free national constitution that was in force since 1774 declared all men equal and free. And if all men are declared by the free national constitution to be free and equal, since that constitution has never been changed, there is no need for the application of the 14th and 15th Amendments for the salvation of our people and citizens. So there isn't but one supreme issue for my people to use to redeem that which was lost, and that is through the above statements. Then the lion and the lamb can lie down together in yonder hills, and neither will be harmed, because love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice will be reigning in this land. In those days, the United States will be one of the greatest civilized and prosperous governments of the world. But if the above principles are not carried out by the citizens and my people in this government, the worst is yet to come, because the great God of the universe is not pleased with the works that are being performed in North America by my people. And this great sin must be removed from the land to save it from enormous earthquakes, diseases, etc. And I, the prophet, do hear and believe that this administration of the government, being more wisely prepared by more genius citizens that believe in their free national constitution and laws, and through the help of such classes of citizens, I, the prophet, truly believe that my people will find the true and divine way of their forefathers and learn to stop serving carnal customs and merely ideas of men that have never done them any good, but have always harmed them. So I, the prophet, am hereby calling aloud with the divine plea to all true American citizens to help me to remove this great sin which has been committed and is being practiced by my people in the United States of America, because they know it is not the true and divine way. And without understanding, they have fallen from true light into utter darkness of sin. And there is not a nation on earth today that will recognize them socially, religiously, politically, or economically, etc., in their present condition of their endeavorment, in which they themselves try to force upon the civilized world. They will not refrain from their sinful ways of action, and their deeds have brought Jim Crowism, segregation, and everything that brings harm to human beings on earth. And they fought the Southerner for all these great misuses. But I've traveled in the South and have examined conditions there, and it is the works of my people continuously practicing the things which bring dishonor, disgrace, and disrespect to any nation that lives the life. And I'm hereby calling upon all true American citizens for moral support and finance to help me in my great missionary work to bring my people out of darkness into marvelous light, Islam. Before we close, though, I would like to put out a call for new members. If there's anyone on the call who's ready to proclaim your nationality and to assist in our uplifting acts, feel free to say something now or in the chat. You can also send us an email at mission30@mstofa.net. Right? But yeah, if anybody's ready to proclaim nationality, feel free to speak up. If anyone wants to send a donation, I just put the website in the chat. You can send a donation. Just go down to the bottom, and you could either click on that QR code or just click where it says donate. The other buttons are for sending dues. So if you want to send a donation, go to the bottom. All right. And that's moorishamericans.com. You could just click more, go to Temple Dues. I put the link in the room though. All right. And okay, so yeah, if anyone wants to proclaim their nationality, just send us an email, mission30@mstofa.net. That's in the chat too. All right. And we're going to go ahead and close out. All meetings are to be opened and closed promptly according to the Circle 7 in love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. We ask that everyone rise and face the east for the closing prayer. You do not need to repeat after me. Allah, bind our hearts and minds back to our ancient forefathers, divine creed and principles. We ask this in thy holy name and the seven Elohim. Amen. Islam, Islamism. Happy Holy Day, Moors. I just advise everybody to look over that Quran. Look over it. Go over those chapters. Go over chapter 5 and 15. Use those invisible tools on a daily basis. All right. And on that note, peace and love. Happy Holy Day.
Happy Holy Day.
Peace and love. Happy holiday.
Peace and love. Happy Holy Day.
Peace and love. Happy Holy Day.
Peace and love. Happy Holy Day. Islamism.